Hello! In this video we're going to be taking a look at all the warrior classes for Breach as of the alpha build. We're going to be looking at them, their different abilities, and kind of comparing them a little bit to help you choose which one you might want to play. We're going to kick things off with the Mana Warrior, who's part of the Battle School of Magic and uses the two-handed sword. Their basic attack is a combo that looks like that. The signature ability of the Mana Warrior is going to be Mana Strike. This will slam your weapon into the ground. It does some AoE damage, and it will grant you a stacking damage shield. So if we go ahead and we're going to spawn a couple enemies here. When they come up, we're going to deal our damage there, and you'll see that we have a buff above our health bar there. That is our stacking damage shield from our Mana Strike. The next ability we have on our one key is Cleave. This is going to be a broad swing. It's going to hit everything in front of you. It's going to deal additional damage to enemies that are taunted, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. So let's take a look at the normal damage we're going to put out here. So we did about 102 damage per enemy with that ability. So that's going to bring us over to our number 3 ability, War Cry. This will taunt enemies, forcing them to attack you for a short duration. So in this case, if we go ahead and spawn some enemies in, and if we taunt them first, and then we cleave, you can see we did over, like an extra 100 damage to them. By using our taunted ability there. So that's a good way if you notice that one of your party members is, getting low on health or is in a bad spot. You can go over, you can taunt, and then you can cleave and hopefully clear out quite a few of those enemies and then focus on whatever is left. Our next ability is Arcane Charge. This is going to charge the target and deal some damage to them. So we can go ahead and put out an enemy here. It's got a pretty long range. It's going to charge over and deal some damage and put you right into the middle of combat. For our ultimate ability, we have Titan's Fist. This will slam your weapon into the ground, dealing a bunch of damage to all enemies in front of you in kind of like a big rectangle. So the Mana Warrior is very focused on getting in there, being right up in the thick of things, swinging the sword around, doing a bunch of damage, taunting enemies off. There's a lot of high mobility, a lot of AoE, and a lot of using your abilities strategically to clear out enemies or to give yourself the damage shield that will help you to survive. Next up on the warrior list is the Reaper. The Reaper is part of the Dark School of Magic, and as such will use the Scythe weapon. And this is kind of what the basic attack sequence here looks like. The Reaper is pretty focused on synergies within its own abilities. So we start things off with our signature ability, which is Sow. Sow is going to strike all enemies in front of you, dealing damage and reducing bonus damage. So this is just a big sort of AoE cleave ability. You've got 3 stacks of it to start out with, and it's going to apply this debuff to your enemies. Now, if we spawn in a couple of these, and we use our ability, you're going to see they're going to have that Sow debuff, and you can see that underneath their health bar. They've got that for, about 30 seconds is how long that's going to last. Now that's important because our first ability on the one key is Reap. Reap is going to consume all Sow debuffs in the area and restore health to you and damage enemies. So if we go ahead and we spawn some more characters in here, we're going to use our Sow ability, and then we can cast Reap. That's going to deal damage to them and give us health back. Now, that seems really nice, but here's the thing. When you're playing with other characters, the small enemies like that have a tendency to die fairly quickly, meaning that when you are casting your Reap ability, there aren't any actual Sow debuffs out in order to make it effective. And this is where I found the trouble with the Reaper has come into play. So generally speaking, on the Reaper, I think it's better to go and try to get that Sow debuff on multiple tougher opponents so that you have that there so that your reap is actually able to be utilized throughout the fight. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll use your charges of sow on these weak enemies. They'll die before you even have a chance to reap, and now this key component of your class, which is getting that healing from reaping in order to stay alive, is no longer going to be there. So go target the stronger enemies, put the sow debuff on 2, 3, 4 of them. That way when reap comes off cooldown, you can use it to deal damage and get yourself some health back. Our next ability is Death's Beckon. This is going to send souls out in the area around you that is going to slow and damage enemies. So this is a kind of a instant cast ability. And whatever is next to us is going to take damage, and then it's going to be slowed as well. So you can see they're trying to chase us, but they are slowed quite a bit. The ultimate ability for the Reaper is going to be Grim Reaper form. This puts you into a new form that makes you immune to damage and gives you an increased amount of haste. So this is a good button to push to essentially, get yourself out of a bad spot or help out your teammates. You can ignore area of effect abilities or ground attacks from, bosses or that kind of stuff, and go in there and help your teammates out. So the Reaper, as you can see, there's a little bit of synergy between the different abilities here, and you're going to be trying to get that sow debuff and then reap with that to keep yourself healed, and then use some of your crowd control abilities to help control the battlefield. The final warrior class is going to be the Bloodstalker, and that is from the Shadow School of Magic. They're going to use the twin swords here, and their basic attack progression looks like that. The signature ability for the Bloodstalker is going to be Cursed Strike. Cursed Strike will damage and mark the target, and then further attacks that you make against that target will heal you and deal additional damage. Now, by nature of the ability here, this is going to work better on stronger enemies. If we were to summon in a weak enemy like this, then we basically used our signature ability here and didn't get any real benefit from it because the creature died off right away. However, if we had a little bit more powerful enemy here with a bigger health bar, then now that buff is going to stay on them. We're going to be healing ourselves the entire time we're attacking them and dealing additional damage. So you can see we came out of that fight with a full health bar thanks to our signature ability. Our next ability on the 1 key is Deathroot Dagger. This is going to deal damage and apply a root to the enemy on hit, and this is usable in the air. So if we summon in an enemy here, we can use that, and that is going to root them. So good crowd control ability. Next up, we have Debilitating Wound. This will deal damage to an enemy and interrupt them. So if they're in the middle of casting a spell, then you can use this to stop them from doing that. So if you see the big AoE cone come out from this guy whenever he decides to do it here, we can interrupt him with our ability. And that can also interrupt like the heavy elites that the Veil Spawn puts out. Overall, it's just a generally good interrupt ability to have. On the 3 key, we have Lacerate. This is going to deal heavy damage and apply a bleed to an enemy. So we can put that on there, and you will see that that just kind of ticks damage away a little bit at a time. And then the ultimate ability for the Bloodstalker is going to be Bloodlust. This gives you a ton of haste and lifesteal. So this is a good button to hit if you're in a situation where your health is pretty low or you just really need to kill something, or both. So the Bloodstalker is really good at targeting specific powerful enemies and using his lifesteal ability to fight them, deal massive damage while also keeping himself alive. So that's an overview of the various warrior classes that you can choose to play as in Breach. Keep in mind when you're looking at these classes that what you play comes down to your own personal preference. They're all pretty good, and whatever looks appealing to you, I go with that. But also keep in mind that as you play and you level up the various classes, you're going to gain access to new abilities from the other classes within the same school of magic. So on the Bloodstalker, for example, you can also unlock abilities to use from the Shadowblade Assassin class. So that may factor into how you want to choose which warrior class you want to play based on how you ultimately want to make your in-game loadout based on the skills you have by default and what you can unlock on the other classes. Thanks everybody for watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Check out some other videos on my channel and subscribe if you like them. Keep encouraging me to make this kind of content. I hope that you're having fun, whatever it is that you're doing out there. And as always, I'll see you on the next video.